This week on the Reality Testing Podcast.
Now, she had the Countess title until she married Tom, which I think brings up even more questions of like, why would you give that up for a guy who can't even be faithful on a Tuesday night at the Regency?
And I will admit that as soon as a housewife walks into a therapy session and they put the therapist's name on the name bar, I am Googling that person. I'm looking at their website, their training, their background, their history. 9 times out of 10, it's a life coach or some other unqualified person to treat trauma.
But you consented to this.
Mm-hmm.
You consented to be on TV, but then also, like, at what point did you have a diminished capacity to consent because of the mental health symptoms that were coming up and that we're all watching and they're being recorded and now they're playing on national television? Like, it's an interesting question.
We are two shrinks obsessed with reality TV. We are breaking down our favorite reality shows, the characters, and what psychology has to say about human behavior when it's being filmed. Pull up a seat and let's get started. This has been a little brainchild of ours for a long time, basically, because that's all we text about.
They're us, but in Fendi.
And we're like, oh my gosh, but also that's me. Just a quick reminder here, we are psychologists talking about mental health themes, but we are not diagnosing anyone in these episodes. This show is for educational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered mental health advice. If you are experiencing a mental health crisis, please contact 988 if you're here in the US or seek local support wherever you are. You can access additional resources at realitytestingpod.com/resources.
Okay. We are sitting down today to talk about the classics. This is always where when people who've never seen Real Housewives, haven't watched much reality TV, they ask you where to start. I usually send them to RHONY, Wahasis in New York City. It's just on another level. So
It is like another level of delusion, if we're being honest.
really, like maybe the title of this episode should just be Delulu because they all are delusion to some degree. But they have recently rebooted it. So we have a whole new cast of characters now. So I thought it'd be good if we just sort of rewound the clock 15 years and went back and talked about the roots, where it all started, the original ladies that have brought us to where we are today, why we.
Has it really been 15 years? That's astounding to me.
I think so. I would have to know what exactly.
I mean, it makes sense. I'm like flashing back to Bethenny and Countess Luann and, like the drama that was going on back then.
What?
Yeah.
And it was like the early days drama before all of this social media stuff playing out in the background.
Yes.
So it was so pure, as purest.
Yeah. 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 And in that way, like extra delusional.
Totally.
Because there wasn't like a checkmate that was kind of going on in the background.
Yeah, people were not coming with binders of receipts to the
Yeah. Okay, so take me through. What's your favorite NYC memory?
Okay.
RHONY memory.
I mean, I don't know if I could boil it down to one, but like the most iconic scene comes to mind. There's some in the more recent years. But like the old heyday of RHONY was Aviva Drescher taking off her leg and throwing from the room. I must have rewound and rewatched that scene hundreds of times. I could not believe she did that.
And what was the drama around it? Like, I can't even remember why she threw her leg. I only remember that she threw
I
it.
don't either. Just
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, I think somebody must have been calling her fake in some way because she said, the only thing fake about me, and she takes off her prosthetic leg from under the table, corrupts the room, and no one could even sit in that room any longer because it was just so unbelievable that she did that.
Yeah, and what do you say? Like, and do you go and retrieve it for her? Because that like really limited what happened next, right?
I mean,
like if you're on her side, if you're a friend, what do you do next? Do you like go over there, like pick it up, take it back? Do you like, what happens?
Yeah,
I want to know.
That's such a good question. And it makes me think like, what would I have done in that moment? And of course, we can, we don't know what we would actually do. But I
Right.
think I would have maybe come close to her and, oh, honey, what, something is awry here. Let's chat about that. What do you think you would have done?
I feel myself getting nervous about like she can't leave, she can't walk without
Yeah.
this prosthetic leg. And so I like feel this like what I can't leave her here. What does she do? What do the producers do? But I think that that's part of what happens on these shows is that these really uncomfortable things
Mhm.
happen and you will see people just walk away. Just leave someone high and dry, which I think challenges a lot of my people pleasy stuff that goes on.
Totally. And I think more recently, people are trying to create these moments and it just feels so
Mhm.
inauthentic. And if you ask me, I would say I believe that Aviva premeditated. I think she thought I'm gonna take this off and throw it across the room for shock value. But I think people do it
Mhm.
now to create storylines and move the story along, whereas she was just trying to be salacious, and she was.
Y Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking about, like, one of the recent episodes of Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, and you see, Angie, like, shake out that scroll,
Yes.
and then you hear everyone's commentary on it, like, Mary and Heather, they're all like, "She had to go to a craft store, she had to buy the paper, she had to super glue it, she had to roll it." Like, you kinda see them, you know, talking shit about this, really,
Right.
but that was, like, very premeditated, and they kinda call her out for that,
Yeah.
like, the way in which she had to create this scroll of all the grievances that she has, right? But Aviva, I think that this is, like, old school reality TV, like, something just kinda happened, and we're all left with the, like, "Oh my
She
gosh, what do we
really,
do with that?"
yeah. How do I make sense of this? What is it for you? What iconic moment from classic RHONY?
I Scary Island.
Yeah.
There let me get some background.
Please.
So, for those of you who haven't seen the show, there is this episode where they all go on vacation to some tropical
Theme
island,
parks or something?
and yeah, something like that. And there is this, like, decompensation that happens with one of the cast members. She's what's her
Kelly
name?
Bensimon.
Kelly? Yeah, Kelly Bensimon, that's right. She is kind of odd to begin
Yeah.
with, like, there's, like, she has said some weird things throughout that season where you're just like, okay, you're just, like, trying to catch up with, like, what she has said. It just feels like a little left of, like, maybe normal,
Yes. Yes.
And then so you kinda watch that the whole season, and then you see this episode where there's obviously been drinking. They've obviously been out in the sun all day. It's in the evening. And there is this complete decompensation of this woman. And it actually moves to a place to where, like, I think at one point, the whole cast just sort of stops and they're like, this woman has gone beyond her reach right now. Like, we have to, everyone go to bed. Everyone,
Love that.
we got to stop, like, stop engaging. Don't do this, go to bed. Because it was like so, I mean, it reached a point to where you were like, oh, this is so cringeworthy. This is so bad. Like, we're kind of watching a mental health crisis here.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking. We can't diagnose because we don't know this one. But even if that was okay to do that, I don't even know what diagnosis I would land on. But decompensation is just the best word. Just like
Yeah.
she fell off the rails and it just was
Yeah.
downhill, downhill, downhill. And
Yeah, like what I mean by decompensation is like her speech stopped making
yeah,
sense. Her ideas were no longer connected. She was just like kind of spouting some things out. There was kind of these rolling hills of emotions, right? Where she'd get really upset and then sort of like, I'm fine, and then disconnect and then get really upset again. It was just so hard to
it
track.
was.
It truly felt like you were watching a breakdown.
Yeah, it was very erratic. And it was beyond just, okay, this woman had too much to drink. Like that, what wasn't
Yeah.
it? It was much
Yeah.
more, yeah, it's just, I don't know what the word is for it. It was much more all encompassing.
Yeah.
And if I was part of the crew, I think I might have been quite concerned about her.
Yeah.
well-being. Well,
Well, I don't think she came back the next season, right? So I
that's
feel
right.
like I think that there's probably like we watched something and we have to, and this is kind of before accountability online, right? Where all of these people would get called out for, or even production or Bravo or whatever would get called out if they, you know, maybe mishandled some of these situations. This is before that, in my opinion. I don't know the behind the scenes. What do I know? But I assume that it was. But still, I don't think she was invited back because there was this like, uh-oh, we saw a breakdown, and like who are we to like invite that back on? Like,
Yes.
I think that there was like this weird feeling that I had as a viewer that we were watching something that she would have been later embarrassed by.
Right. Yeah, that's right. And we talked a bit about how part of the allure of these shows is the voyeurism aspect. But then there's a level of things that just shouldn't be seen. And
Yeah.
that felt like part of it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I will say that that scene in Scary Island is what I think the episode was called that, or the ladies like kind of dubbed it
Yeah.
that. But that scene was referenced I like throughout the rest of
Yeah.
RHONY with the old cast.
Yeah.
It came up. They're like, we don't want to have another Scary Island. We don't want this. Like it came up. It was an epic moment in RHONY history.
Yeah. And when we were having our dry spell over the summer, I was watching the Ultimate Girls Trip.
Oh, yes. And they go back.
They go back there
D-
with her, and she kind of gets a little, it wasn't Scary Island level, but she sort of has a repeat of that event. And it was very upsetting.
Yeah, which makes me think like, what was that about? And this is separated by 10
Right.
years, right? You would think that there would have been, I don't know, some like growth, but maybe I think this brought up the question of like, is this actually just her state most of the time? And we're watching it and it's enough. Like we shouldn't be watching it. Like we gave her another
Right.
chance, sort of, and it's still just as bad. And so we need to like not go back here again.
Yeah. Yeah. And that just brings up this bigger ethical question of production. Like, what sort of responsibility do they have to not put people in dangerous situations? How much is
Right.
she able to control herself? And if not, certainly that makes for good reality television. I mean, you think that some of the people on this show, Ramona, Sonia, Lou, Dorinda, these people all have some impulse control problems, and that's what makes such good reality TV. But at what point do we, as viewers or as production, have a responsibility to say, hey, let's not put this person in that
Yeah.
situation? And then to me, and I don't know what it is about it, but to me, this crosses the line. I don't enjoy watching.
Yeah. I think you brought up a good word, which is danger. Like, is this person in danger? Is this unsafe for them? Because as I was saying all of this, I'm also feeling like, well, so what if she has some mental health issues? Like, it's okay for those to be out and about. Like, we shouldn't be ashamed of those things. We shouldn't, but it's more than that. I'm okay with mental health being out
Totally.
there and for it to be kind of like messy, right? It doesn't have to be cleaned up. It doesn't have to be well explained. It would be totally okay for someone to decompensate on screen. That would be fine. But this sort of moved into like her mind felt like it was falling apart, like that danger zone. And sometimes when that happens, it's hard for minds to come back together again. And that's what I think felt dangerous about it, or like unethical,
Yes.
right?
Yes. And that by watching it and having her on the show and participating in this, that we're making it worse somehow.
Yes.
Participating.
Yes.
I think kind of a good like counter example of someone's mental health struggle playing out on RHONY is Leah from more recent season.
Yeah.
I believe she has said she's bipolar. She has bipolar disorder. She also had a substance use problem. She's in recovery. And I think watching her and remembering those episodes where she's in someone's yard, is it Ramona's backyard? I don't remember, just
Yes.
throwing the torches, the tiki torches, but
Yes. Naked.
and she was off her rocker completely.
Mhm.
And then, the next day kind of reconstitutes and goes, well, I've got a real problem. I gotta get some help, and gets some help and does a lot better. There's this level of insight and self-reflection that feels like, okay, we're watching this person work on themselves rather than we're watching this person self-destruct, get worse.
Yeah. Yeah, which I think brings up some like interesting legal questions,
Yeah.
right? Which what would we know about any of that? But there's kind of this like, but you consented
Mhm.
to this.
Mhm.
You consented to be on TV, but then also like at what point do you have a diminished capacity to consent because of the mental health symptoms that were coming up and that we're all watching and they're being recorded and now they're playing on national television? Like it it's an interesting question
Very much so. And
for
I
us to
think,
consider.
recently, Brandy Glanville has brought a lawsuit against, I believe, Andy Cohen for putting
Interesting.
her in some dangerous situations, too much alcohol, not taking people's concerns and complaints seriously, some sexism, some coercion. I believe, I'm not a legal expert, but I believe legally it kind of got thrown out. But this is something that some of these reality stars are now saying is, yeah, I made great TV, but I didn't consent to that. And I don't think you can consent to it because you don't know what it will bring out of you until you're in that
Right.
situation. So I think, right.
Right. But it brings up an interesting question of consent because then none of this is consensual. So then that's weird,
It is
right?
weird.
For us to participate in it.
Don't make me hate participating in this though. I want to.
Hey, no, I know. No, we're here to do it. But it's an interesting thing. I actually think that one of the people that encouraged Brandy Glanville, at least according to some of the like internet sleuths, was Bethenny Frankel,
Yes.
which is one of the original cast members of RHONY,
Mhm.
of what we're talking about here. And she had her own moments. Specifically on Scary Island, she was a huge part of the like, everyone go to bed,
Mhm.
like, nope, that something is not right here. When Kelly Bensimon was kind of breaking down. But she's also had like some serious breakdowns over the
Oh,
years. She had like a really nasty divorce that it was like hard for her to talk about because of the legal implications, but it went on for like 10 years. And I think it was like pretty ugly. And we kind of saw that play out on several seasons.
yeah. And more recently, she has been going live on social media and posting some like really unhinged TikToks that,
About what?
I mean, who even knows? I don't TikTok. I don't follow her. I just kind of get this all secondhand source. So maybe I should go back to the original source. But she's done things like she'll show up at a Chanel store and they don't let her in because she doesn't have an appointment. And she will just go off on the brand and say, oh, it's because I'm dressed this way or I look this way. She'll show up the next day dressed in head to toe Chanel, looking nice. And they let her in and she shops. And she's trying to make these like commentaries on things, but it's all very produced and made up and not consistent with reality. She's doing these like grocery store makeup reviews on social media. It's
Now, I do know during COVID, she was like, I have had my makeup done for so many years and I have no idea how to do it. And so she started like testing
yeah,
all these brands, which I think has actually turned into like a multi-million-dollar venture for her with the sponsorship she gets on social media now for these makeup brands that she like
which good
tries.
for her, but it's like
I
the
know.
intensity with which she does them, the angles of the camera. I
Yeah,
mean, in to me, Bethany is one of the funniest people. I
for
laugh
sure.
so hard at the things that just she's so witty and it comes so quickly out of her mouth. It just has
Yeah.
me rolling. But
Yeah.
I think we're watching her discrepancy in real time, and
Yeah.
it's getting uncomfortable again. But she's doing this on her own channel now. Bravo has taken a plot,
Right.
or she's
Yeah.
not to participate, whatever that's about. But she's a little unhinged these days herself.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like this is like a storyline, like things just get unhinged the more you are a part
Yeah.
of these things, which I think is really
Where
interesting.
you participate in reality TV, the more disconnected you get to reality. Oh, the irony.
Interesting.
Well, I mean,
Tell me what else? What else went on in RHONY that you loved?
some of Luann's moments, I will forever be indebted to her and the giggle she's provided me. I'm thinking
You got to say it. You've got to say her famous line.
the uncool one.
Yes.
Don't be all like uncool. It's what are good morning.
Be cool.
Don't be all
like all
cool.
cool.
Oh man, I am uncool, and I would love if Luann called me uncool, but her bringing home the pirate on another vacation. And I believe it was Carol who said, I heard two male voices. One was Luann's, but I put out my drink. There's these great one-liners that you can't hear it for the first time ever again. Like hearing the one-liners for the first time just set me. And then her whole storyline about Tom and that marriage and how it was,
Oh my God.
she got on it anyways.
Yes. It was one of those interesting relationships, I think, that play out on social media where we all feel it deep down in our bones, how wrong it feels, how yucky, how cringy, how something is going on. And she is so committed to it no matter what.
So good. And she's not stupid. That's the thing. She's not dumb. And so
No.
we all knew she saw it too. And so we're left asking ourselves, why is she going forward? Why?
Yeah. Why do you think?
I think she could not admit that she was wrong, that she had got together with this person who wasn't good for her, and just could not admit that. And so to her, it was less embarrassing to go forward with the wedding and then later divorce rather than. That's the sense I take.
Which I think happens for people, right? They're like, we've come this far and this is the hill that I'm going to die on. I also think, she was kind of in like the height of her drinking.
Yep.
This is before she stopped drinking or had like a stint of sobriety. I don't think she's sober anymore, but I have had these moments specifically in New York City where there is this like group of friends. They all have this rhythm, right? Around like, for me, it was like live music shows. And then you go out to a bar after and it's alcohol fueled. And there's like all of these like cool people showing up and you're having these great conversations and you look up and it's 4 a.m. and everyone's going to get to work late the next morning, but no one cares. And so you like go back to someone's apartment and you're chatting some more. And it just like, it's a vibe, and it like, it feels like a once in a lifetime. This is what New York is all about. This is what, I don't know, like you're afraid that your youth is slipping by and you got to like take advantage of these like young moments. Right. And I can literally point back to times that I have experienced this exact thing in New York City. And she, I think, found it again. Like she probably had that moment earlier in life. And then and even in Europe, like it's a very like European feeling, right? And then she is in her 50s and she finds this moment in time again with this guy that will drink with her all night. They're known at the hotel bars and, they're known about town. Yes. And like, there's like a vibe and she's like trying, and then they go to Palm Beach and the same thing happens there. And they're like living this yacht life with all of these connections and all these friends. And it's just something that for better or for worse, we don't want to give it up whenever we're in it. And I think that's how I see that whole season for her.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. And I think a lot of her storyline too has been trying to find a partner again. After the dissolution of her marriage. I think she finally thought this was the one. And when she realized it wasn't, she was like, but I'm not letting go of that grief.
Right. Right.
Oh, that was heartbreaking to watch. I mean, not heartbreaking in the like, oh, I can't believe he did that to you, but like, ooh, I can't believe you're going forward. It would be hard to be your friend in that moment. I actually think Bethenny was a good friend in that moment.
Oh, for sure.
Well, tell me it's about time.
For sure. This is like definitely a soapbox that I'll stand on, that across all of the franchises, there are moments where women are being good friends by telling other women something that men are doing out there in the world, and they get rejected for it or they get slashed for it or like, you're wrong and how dare you. And it's like, no, that person was being a friend. Go be mad at your man.
Yeah. Right.
For acting a fool.
Right.
Right. And I think in that moment, Bethenny was she was, being a friend.
Yeah. And I wonder if Luann knew that he was stepping out on her and was just, as long as, the general public doesn't know, I can keep it under wraps.
Right.
And so when Bethenny brought it to her, she realized, oh, people talking. I think it was more of that rather than Luann didn't know. Like, I think she knew.
No, I mean, this was not like the picture of devastation. This was like Tom.
Yeah.
She went in her phone call. She's like, how could you do this? Which felt like how could you do this so openly where people knew about it? You know what I mean?
Oh, man. These women. Well, I think there's a couple of just overarching themes that, as I'm thinking back through the classic RHONY years, come up for me, and I would love to talk through. And as I'm thinking about all of these seasons we have of these women, I have to admit that I am drawn to this show because of the trauma narrative. We're trauma therapists.
Yeah.
This is what we do.
Yeah.
Butter. I think of most things in life through a trauma lens. And when I first started thinking about RHONY, I was like, there's so much trauma, and how that to me really incorporates a lot of the behaviors we see on screen.
Yeah, I mean, I think that yes, if you could go through the line of characters and there through seasons, through like hires and fires and whatever, and there is just this like intense trauma narrative, and sometimes it's ongoing,
Yes.
like on screen, right? With the like Sonia. Oh, I have a place in my heart for Sonia Morgan. I love her. She is like, she's an oddball. I think she like says the most outlandish, crazy things, but I also like have such a soft spot for her. I'm thinking about the time that they were in Salem and they were doing that like seance, and I think they did like a tour or something like that of like a library, and there was like some Morgan something.
The Morgan letters.
And the Morgan letters, and she was like, falling apart in real time over a man that she does not have a relationship with, has not for a very long time. Their marriage was a very short part of her life, but she has like overly identified with it.
Yeah.
Like it was that marriage was the thing that saved her from something. And now that she's lost it, she still has to stay connected to it. Otherwise she's not saved anymore. Right.
She
She's
takes
not
the town hall.
Yes. Right. Which is like falling apart. Like someone needs to come in and renovate the hell out of it. But yeah, I just have such a soft spot for her.
I believe her daughter's name is Quincee too.
It is. Yeah. It is. Yeah.
You are connected to that soul sister spirit. I love Wawa.
Yeah.
I love her.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Me
And then
too.
Bethenny, I just think of her story and the profound trauma that she experienced growing up and having her dad and leave the family, and that hole that was just never filled in her life. And not knowing her background, before I knew her background, I think of her as this very strong woman. I mean, she certainly got her faults and failures, as we all do, but she's very strong. She built that business the ground up. She takes care of herself very well. And I have to think that drive in her is from feeling, like she has never taken care of or had a father to look after her. And that drives up.
Yeah. I think when you hear the story of her dad, it was like, he was always at the racetracks. He was like kind of a seedy character. She was maybe having to take care of him a lot. But I'm thinking, when you were talking about Bethenny going off the rails, on social media currently, she had just a few months ago announced that her mom had suddenly died.
Yes.
And I feel like that was right before all the Chanel stuff went down.
That's a good point. I did not make that connection until now.
Yeah, I mean, until now. I'm speaking the connection right now into existence. But yeah, I mean, I think she also talked about how difficult her relationship was with her mom. It just like, it was never like a close mother-daughter relationship, which is why I think she is such a good mom to her daughter, right? So thoughtful, so protective, so like encouraging, I think. Yeah. And then she has a fall apart moment. But I wonder if that's connected to her mom.
Yeah, I do too. And to me, we've seen her in a couple therapy sessions we've seen a lot of housewives therapy sessions. And I will admit that as soon as a housewife walks into a therapy session and they put the therapist's name on the name bar, I am Googling that person. I'm looking at their website, their training, their background, their history. 9 times out of 10, it's a life coach or some other unqualified person to treat trauma. for a therapist, seems great. This is one of the examples of kind of reality star going to therapy where I think some real work is being done, at least what we're seeing on bits on television. But so much comes up in those sessions. Wow. The trauma she lived through and how it affects her today. And I think she has some level of insight into it, but it is so deep that, I think it is still affecting her. And I wonder if some of her more recent gifts are related to the death of her mom, or even her daughter getting older and her not being able to fulfill that mother role and things.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's still more to see about Bethenny. We just won't see it on Bravo because I think she's cut ties. But I do think that there's more to see of like how, I don't know, like an older woman that has had a lot of mental health work and support.
Yeah.
She has all the resources in the world, but she definitely started off without a lot of resources, like how that kind of plays out in older years. I think that would be really interesting.
Yeah. I need that on my TV screen. I agree. I don't think it will be on Bravo.
No, it'll have to be somewhere else.
Yeah. And, the other character on this show who's trauma, I think we're just seeing full force, is Ramona Singer. This woman is, some have called her a monster. I don't know that I disagree with that. Where Sonia says sideways things, Ramona says mean things. Ramona can just be, so nasty. And she doesn't realize it. Like, she thinks she's just being herself or being funny. And she's so out of touch with reality and what everyday people live through. And her word choice is often so harmful to talk to people. And as the seasons go on, we learn more and more her trauma history too, and how her father is abusive. And it makes sense for her too, and how she had to go out and be this self-made woman who loves money and finds security in that, because I'm not going to get it man. And the irony being, her did eventually leave her, and they seemed in the first couple of seasons like this is such a strong relationship. She was even a little loony then, and I thought, well, if he sticks with her through this, he loves her. He's great with her. And then him leaving her, I think, just sent her into that spiral where she realized that the rejection that she feared so deeply became a reality.
Yeah, she's interesting to me because I think Bethenny called her the apologizer, and I think that is exactly what Ramona the apologizer, like this chronic, like, oh, if I just apologize, it'll go away. And the way in which that just prevents her from ever actually taking accountability. There's this yucky falsehood to her.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me like walk you through this. Like I'm like seeing a scene where they're all sitting at this like picnic table. I think that they're at a vineyard. I think it was in one of the last seasons. And she snaps. She said something snide and mean to someone. They have a reaction and she immediately apologizes. And then she kind of has this like fake breakdown, like this, like, and like crying. And it's like so off-putting. It feels so fake. It feels so produced.
Yes.
But she has the story of trauma. So I think what I have a hard time with, and what I think other people might have a hard time with, is like the story that she comes to the table with is one that deserves empathy, right? And compassion. But the way in which she presents it, it is so hard for me to actually have compassion for her. Yes. That like fake crying, or that like there's something that goes on there that I'm like, oh, go away. Like, I don't even know what to do with that.
It's distancing and off-putting. And I think, to me, the difference lies in when people blame their trauma for how they are and say, oh, I'm this way because of my trauma, as opposed to saying, my trauma has resulted in this behavior and I am taking ownership of it. There's a very big difference between an excuse and a reason. I think with with Ramona, it is treated like an excuse. Well, I have this trauma. I've been mistreated in these ways, and so it's okay, which is very different than I've got this trauma and I'm working through it and I'm taking ownership of it and I'm not allowing it to control me anymore. Yeah. And with Ramona, there's just this profound lack of self-awareness. She does not perceive
Yeah.
how others see her at all. That is so icky and cringe.
It is. It is.
And she gets me thinking, she says some really terrible things in her recent seasons. She said some pretty racist things. And I have to
Yes.
think,
Ugh.
I guess she's not on our TV anymore. And a lot of us could argue, we don't know what happened that season, but a lot of us could argue that it was because of her and they just dissolved the whole thing and start over. But I wonder why we allow people like her to be on our screens, but then other people like Kelly Dodd, who say equally racist and terrible things, we're like, get them off my TV right now, call for their firing. But Ramona is like, oh, that's like, what's the difference? Why are some people allowed to say these out of pocket things and other people are, that fire them immediately for saying something when, quite honestly, they're all just terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know. I think, I wonder what kind of power Ramona had or
Yeah.
influence or connections or, I don't know. It just feels like when you think of the Kelly Dodds out there in the world, I don't know that the entire Orange County would have fallen apart, right? Without her there.
Yeah,
Like
she's been gone for many seasons.
it didn't, right. And I don't even know if I noticed, it was just sort of like okay,
Yeah.
moving on next. But I would notice if Shannon Bedore left.
Yes.
And like, I don't know. So I wonder if Ramona just like had people's curiosities or they were afraid that it would have like a big impact on the show. I don't know. But
Yeah.
but I think because of something, she got away with more.
Yeah. There's something about being an original housewife too. I think of Teresa.
Mhm.
She is
Mhm.
dumber than a box of rocks. And she does not make an argument that I can even get on board with ever about anything.
Yeah.
And yet
Yeah.
she's continued on this show for many seasons. And I have to wonder, and maybe it is these were originals. Ramona was an original. Teresa was an original. And maybe there's some kind of pull where they do feel like the entire show was.
Yeah. Or they're, I mean, at least with Ramona, a white woman that just gets away with more, which I think is worth us just acknowledging
Bing,
here.
bing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, but she's off our screens now. So we can maybe start to unpack that. And maybe we will in a later episode, just do a deep dive into a person that is.
Yeah. I mean, I think that that's worth a whole episode to just sort of dissect what happened over the 15 years, that she was on screen.
Well, maybe we pour ourselves a glass of Ramona Pinot Grigio and talk about it one day.
And have a little turtle time, right?
Lord, this woman. Yeah. But, on that same note with the trauma, there is so much just lost too, which you're kind of speaking to.
Yeah.
A lot of the big players on this show have narratives of loss. Sonia losing her ties to the Morgan family, Luann losing that chunk
And her.
Yeah. What was it?
Yeah. And with Sonia, she had that bankruptcy.
Yes.
Remember, there was like a couple of seasons where it was like, no, we're doing great. And I had this new business and we're doing great. We're doing great. Yes. And then there was this like, it all came out in the media and she was like, no, really, I'm in a bad spot. Right. That was actually when I think most people got behind Sonia because they were like, finally, you're just being honest.
You're being real. You're
right. Instead of like, yeah, all this pomp and circumstance.
Completely. Luann, similarly, I mean, she reacted very differently, but she lost her prestige as a countess.
Yes. Now, she had the countess title until she married Tom, which I think brings up even more questions of like, why would you give that up for a guy who can't even be faithful on a Tuesday night at the Regency?
There's so many questions. I need him to come on the show so we could just explore this with him. Not even in a judgmental way. I would never sit Luann down and be like, what were you thinking? I would.
No, I know.
Understand. Walk me through. I want to get it.
Tell me what was going on. Yeah.
Carol and Dorinda's husbands both dying, I think were big brief narratives that got.
And I think the interesting thing about Carol is that she has all these connections to the Kennedys, right? They were her like besties. And so she lost them and her husband to cancer. I did not realize that she was only married to him for a year.
Didn't realize that either.
Yeah. Well, now that I'm saying that, I'm wondering if it was 5 years, but it was like a very short amount of time, comparatively. Like, I feel like the narrative on the show, or what I was left with, was this, like, they were married for 15 years, and then suddenly he died. But it was a actual very short amount of time.
Well,
And he had cancer before they got married.
oh, so it was someone expected. It wasn't out of nowhere. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting. I wonder.
Doesn't that, like, change it for you?
It
Like,
does. It does.
yeah.
That's not the sense I was getting from how it was talked about. But
Yeah, it's still a loss,
totally, I don't want
right?
to minimize more.
But she writes these, like, best-selling books about this, like, deep loss, and, like, I'll never kind of be in a marriage or be in a relationship like that again. Like, he was the love of my life, which could be
Totally.
true. But the amount of time, it was just sort of shocking whenever I
Yeah.
learned that.
And it's making me think that, going back to the delusional theme, I'm not calling Carol delusional, but like, is there some level of idealization? I
Yes.
have this person that I love and I have very limited time with them because they have this horrific cancer. So you don't have the hard conversations. You're not planning for 10
Right,
years down the road. And
right,
it's all
right, and
realized.
he's not getting on your nerves for not doing the
Oh,
dishes, because he doesn't do the dishes because he's
yeah.
sick, right? Like, there's this, idealization that happens when someone is sick and you're not having to live through kind of that, like, yucky monotony
Right.
that happens in relationships.
Me. Yeah, that does change things for me.
Yeah. And then there's Dorinda,
Moderate that.
and she honestly, I love her. I mean, that we have these moments where, like, what does she yell at people? Clip, clip. She just, like, clips them off. They're saying things that she doesn't like. Dorinda can go from 0 to 100 in less than a second. She is a hothead. She is totally reasonable at
Yeah.
times, and I think, what a lovely woman. I love her, like, how sweet. She's opening up her home for this trip or
For the
whatever, and
Drescher.
then yes, and then she has these moments where I'm like, "Oh my god, what has happened?"
Well, alcohol is what has happened. She
Yes.
gets obliterated on television, which is part of it. But I
Yeah.
do think there is some kind of impulsivity to her at base.
Yeah, and I kind of wonder how much of that existed before grief and how much of that was tolerated after grief, right? And social circles. And then you put a camera, and then now it's like a
Yeah,
brand to sort of be that way, and, say these kind of sideways things to people.
right. She's not mean in the way that
No,
it
no.
strikes me as funny with her. And
Yeah.
then, I'm left again asking myself, am I participating in someone's decompensation television?
Yeah. Yes.
And what's the tickle?
Yes. Yes.
Well,
There's also themes of power and wealth
well,
here that I think we have to talk about.
totally.
That I think, old RHONY was a little out of touch. And
Oh,
I think that that's why they recast it and rebooted. And I appreciate
yeah.
that. Because there was, like, arguments that happened that, oh, wow, you have really lost the plot here, ladies. Like, you forget what it's like to be a normal person
Yeah.
that has to go to the grocery store,
Right.
and, like, doesn't have hair and makeup done and glam done every day. Like, there was just some moments where it's like, we're really outside of the bounds of, like, normal reality and normal. And I think that that's, like, something that we want in reality TV, is like, we want them to have something that we don't,
Yeah.
right? Because it's like, we're chasing something, or, like, they live a life that maybe we don't have access to, but they still have to be real people.
Yeah.
Right? They still have to, like, you know, pick up dog shit
Yeah.
like Tamara's doing. In one of the recent episodes, like, they have to have some level of normalcy, and I think that that's maybe where, old RHONY, like, lost touch, and they had to start over and scrap it.
Yeah, I think you're probably right about that. I'm remembering the episode in the Berkshires at Dorinda's. Uh, I believe it was Ramona who was like, "I just can't handle the heat," and ordered an air conditioner to be installed to her home because she couldn't hands from church. I was just like, this is not how normal people deal with their problems. But grounding.
Yeah, the rest of us just
Yeah.
let or go get in the pool.
Yeah.
You know, we just like live with it, right?
Completely out of touch.
Says the two women that had babies during heat
A heat wave.
yeah.
That was,
a heat wave here in LA.
oh, that was like, I'm glad we're past that.
Okay, the last theme that I think comes up a lot is substance use. And I think that this is going to be a theme throughout any of our discussion of reality TV, because I think that there's a lot of substance use, or there's big narratives made out of not drinking or not using substances on screen or in life. And so but I think we see that really play out in, you know, the way that specifically Ramona, she gets lit. Dorinda, sideways. Sonia, I mean, has had like unintelligible speech at times, you know, and getting naked and jumping into pools. Like and yeah, they're having fun, certainly. And we're getting to sort of participate in watching that fun. But certainly there's some painful moments that come up because of substance use.
Oh, completely. And Luann, I mean, that happened off screen with her arrest, a DUI, or it wasn't a DUI. She assaulted an officer, resisted arrest, and got herself in a lot of legal trouble while under the influence. And I think there is that fine line between the social lubricant and it being fun and setting the tone for a party or a special occasion, and then just getting completely blasted and not even making intelligible sense. Or doing things that are just really out of line. That becomes to be.
Yeah.
And it's across
sure.
all of the franchises. This one's not unique.
Not just RHONY.
Yeah. But it did seem to me that the RHONY women, at least the historical classic, they would film for however many weeks, and they would just be on a bender.
Yeah.
And then they would sober up, dry out, go to Florida for 3 weeks.
Well, yeah. And Sonia even talks about that. She's like, she would talk about like these retreats that she would go on. And like, her friends were mad at her after filming because she like wouldn't reach out for 3 months because she was at like somewhere, like getting her life back together and probably drying a little, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. We'll have a lot to unpack there, for sure. But it is definitely a prominent theme.
Yes.
And doesn't seem to be as much of one in the new RHONY, which is kind of nice. I think.
No. Yeah, I do too. I like that we're having like good conversations and like it's not all about like alcohol and like how drunk someone is.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, shall we move to a reality testing segment?
We shall. You go first.
Okay.
Who needs a dose of reality?
I picked Luann here. I mean, just the level of delusion with her. And it's not just one delusion, right? Like she has this relationship with Tom and was so delusional. Her delusion about still being a countess, and it's not Mrs. de Lesseps. Or I'm not Luann, I'm Mrs. de Lesseps. You're not.
Yeah.
And then her cabaret career and her singing career, it's like I'm sorry, Luann, but you're not a good singer. Glad you're having fun. Chase your dream, honey, but this is not, you're good at many things and this is not it.
Yeah.
But we love her for it.
The jump scare between Real Housewives to a singing sensation is really hard for me to watch, and it happens over and over and over.
This is a mother theme across franchises. We should unpack.
Yeah.
Looking at you, Melissa Gorga.
Okay, and how about the intake? Oh, I have to do
we can get your testing. Who needs a dose of reality?
Ramona, the apologizer. I think that she is deeply cringeworthy. We talked a little bit about like how that was showing up, but there just seems to be like a falsehood to how she's reacting to normally pretty emotional moments. She seems to be faking her way through these emotional moments, which just rubs me in all the wrong ways. It really chaps my ass.
Yeah.
So that's a no for me.
Yeah.
And she never really takes accountability. So,
Yeah.
no, thank you.
It's scripted in the sense that I'm going to apologize because it's what you're supposed to do. And that's why I get people to stop being, trying to hold me accountable. Not I'm apologizing, just taking ownership.
Yes.
with you.
Yikesy. Okay, how about the intake? So we're not going to do first impressions because, my God, we've been watching this show for apparently 15 years, which I am totally upset about. But what loss are we grieving with the old cast being out and the new cast being in? What are you missing?
You know, I always miss a housewife when she's fired or decides not to come back. I just feel it every season. I'm like, this is the time to come back. You can't disrupt. But really, in this case, it's Dorinda. And you can have Ramona, you can have Sonia. Let's put those cows out to pasture. But Dorinda, I need her back on my screen. I need her unpaused. I don't know what it is. It's just, she's got a little spice and that flair that other ones don't.
Who else would show up to a cabaret show yelling Giovanni? Giovanni!
I cannot. Yes.
Dorinda. Dorinda. Yeah.
I love her for that moment. That is forever seared in my memory in the best way.
Same.
What about you? Who are you missing? What loss are you grieving?
So I'm with you with the Dorinda thing. I'm on board with that. I'm gonna claim her as well, but also Bethenny. I really like Bethenny. I like how she is really honest. Her intensity is upsetting, I think, for a lot of people to watch, but I think it's like so classic housewife, so classic like New Yorker even, right? Like she's doing something in that space that I feel like, we don't have a comparison. So I'm missing her presence for sure.
I am too. Okay, what are you dying to discuss?
I think that eventually there needs to be like a follow-up, like a one-off season in 5 years, in 7 years, where we just see like where they are now and like that, like I said, that jump scare, right? Between like where we ended with them and like where they are now. I want to see like what life has been like without reality TV. How do they spend their time? Do they still vacation the same? Are they still friends? Or has life gotten significantly easier because they're not having to manage all of this like media mess, right? And they don't have new offenses, right? I think that that's part of the Housewives that is probably hard on people is like every year there's a new season and you say things that upset new people.
Yeah. Right.
You have new offenses to have to apologize for at the reunion. And, that stopped for them, unless, of course, they're acting a fool online. But, like, that stopped on, like, camera.
Yeah.
Right? So I long for that, like, reunion show in a couple of years.
We got that ever so slightly with Kristen from Real Housewives of New York when she came back on Ultimate Girls Trip. Like, I haven't seen you in years. You live in California now? Like, that was to me to learn that and how her likeness seemed better now with that reality.
Yeah.
A lot better.
Yeah. What about you? What are you dying to discuss?
Whatever is going on with Bethenny Frankel, I would love her to come into our office for a full-on assessment because I just really want to know. And this is telling me that I think we need to devote a whole future episode to Bethenny and the storyline that she's given us and what we know about her.
I'm into it. I really do think that, we'll talk about some of these things like high-level themes of what we see and mental health stuff, but I really love the idea of taking a character and talking about their history, and we'll link sources and media that's been like presented on them. Like we will do all of that because I think that that's really helpful in like understanding kind of like this, they are characters on reality TV, but they're also people, and that might be a reclaiming of their humanity.
Yep. I'm so here for it.
I like it.
Right.
Okay, so Megan, where can people find you if they want to see some of the shenanigans that you're up to online?
Yeah, Dr. Megan Johnson on both Instagram and TikTok. How about you?
And I'm Dr. Quincee on Instagram and TikTok, and we look forward to seeing you guys there.
All right, we'll see ya.
If you are a reality TV junkie like us and you have an idea of something you'd like for us to cover on this pod, you can email us at realitytestingpod@gmail.com. If you like today's episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform so that others can find us. We had so much fun with you today. We'll see you next time. Okay, love you. Bye.